From Lidlad, and today in this video we are going to look into Romantic and Victorian criticism. I hope you liked our previous lecture on ancient, medieval and neoclassical criticism. So let's begin with your first question from Romantic criticism. In the preface to lyrical ballads, Wordsworth chose incidents and situations from rustic life because this is so simple. But as I said already, some simple questions we really need to know here, and these are also difficult in the exam hall, right? So which one is correct? Option A, language of working class was superior. Passions are connected with nature and less restraint. To align with neoclassical decorum. To protest the French Revolution. So, here is your answer. The correct answer is option B. Wordsworth believed that in rustic life, the essential passions of the heart find a better soil in which they can attain their maturity, are less under restraint, and speak a plainer and more empathetic language. So, there is a connection to nature. If you see other options like here, option A, option C, option D, Wordsworth elevated the language of men in humble and rustic life, not the pupil themselves, right? And Wordsworth was actively protesting against neoclassical tenets, particularly its elaboration. And also, the lyrical ballads were seen as a subtle revolution in poetry, but not a direct protest against the French Revolution. That's why these three options are not correct. Option which option B is the correct answer. Okay. I hope you understand. So please remember you have to analyze the options as well to know more and more because we don't know from which area they will give us question, but we can try. Okay, please read extra about Wordsworth as a critic. Next question from Coleridge. The faculty described by Coleridge as the repetition in the finite mind of the eternal act of creation in the infinite I am is it fancy, secondary imagination, primary imagination, or reason? Can you guess it? Repetition in the finite mind of the eternal act of creation in the infinite I am. It is primary imagination. For Coleridge, the primary imagination is the living power and the prime agent of all human perception. It is the fundamental creative act that allows us to perceive the world echoing the divine creation. Okay, remember. And if you see other option here like fancy, secondary imagination, for Coleridge, fancy is a laser faculty, a mere mode of memory, within quote, mode of memory that only collects and arranges fixities and definities without truly creating. Okay, this is fancy in view of Coleridge. And what is secondary imagination? This is the conscious creative power of the poet. It is an echo of the primary imagination, differing only in degree and the mode of operation. But it is not the source of all perception and knowledge as described. And what is reason? In the romantic sense, reason is associated with the cold, calculating, and limiting intellect like we can find in Immanuel Kant's understanding, which Coleridge contrasts with the creative power of imagination. So these are the analysis of this option. I hope you understand. If you have any query or doubt, just let me know. Okay, moving into next question. The literary magazine, considered the founding publication of German Romanticism, established by the Koyel brothers in 1798, was, so which is the magazine? Remember, also neoclassical magazines are also important, as we are covering literary criticism here. A few literary criticism magazine are important, but in overall, if we see the British literature, magazines, newspaper, newsletters, those are really important to know. So please take a look into it. Okay. So here correct answer is the option C. Option C, the Athenaeum. Founded by August Wilhelm and Carl Wilhelm Friedrich Sissel, the Athenaeum was the theoretical organ of early German Romanticism. Okay, publishing fragments and aphorisms that define the moment. Remember, the Athenaeum is the name of this journal, and it was only published for 2 years, like 1798 to 1800. What are the other options here? Sturm and Drang. It is actually a literary movement preceding Romanticism, associated with Goethe and Schiller, emphasizing emotion, subjectivity, and dramatic intensity. This literary movement was in 1760s or 80s. Okay. Then option B, Die Leiden des Jungen Werthers. This is actually a Goth's novel. Okay. In English, it is The Sorrows of Young Werther. It was published in 1774. Okay. It is actually a novel name. And option D, you would all know, it is lyrical ballads, foundation of our romantic era. So it was published in 1798, of course, right? So the next question is, according to Coleridge, fancy is distinguished from imagination because fancy, I just told you when I was describing fancy, it is really, if you heard me, then you can answer it quickly. So which one is it? Not all the time I am going to utter these options. You can just find it. Okay, so here the option C. Option C means fancy has no creative power. It holds fixities. Remember, Coleridge viewed fancy as a lower faculty, a mode of memory that merely aggregates fixities and definities without blending or fusing them into something new, which is the work of the imagination. Right? So, moving into next one. Identify the text in which Shelley famously asserts that poets are the unacknowledged legislators of the world. It is a very powerful comment by Shelley about poets. So, in which work we have this comment on the necessity of atheism, a defense of poetry, Prometheus Unbound, the marks of anarchy. Tick tick one, tick tick two. I know you know that. So the correct answer is A Defense of Poetry. It was written in 1821. Shelley's essay argues that poetry creates the moral and intellectual climate in which social change takes place, making poets the true, though unacknowledged, guides of society. Okay, so it was published in 1821. Please remember the publication year of important critical works, and they can ask the chronological order as well. Other options like On the Necessity of Atheism, it is an hourly controversial pamphlet for which Shelley was expelled from Oxford. Okay, so it is also important. It was published in 1811. Prometheus Unbound, it is a major lyrical drama. It is not a critical essay though, but it is also important if you see the Shelley as poet. It was published in 1820. The Marks of Anarchy. It is a political poem by Shelley and published in 1819. Okay. So all the works by Shelley are really important to know whether it is critical or not. Next question we have Kant. Kant's philosophy argued we cannot know the world in itself, only the world known subjectively through our senses, which is the world of dash. Imagination, emotion, reason, phenomena. Immanuel Kant, we are talking about. So Kant talked about it in Critique of Pure Reason, right? So what is the answer? It is option D, phenomena. In his Critique of Pure Reason, Kant distinguished between the thing in itself, which is noumenon, and the thing as it appears to an observer. Observer means phenomenon. So this emphasis on the subjective mind's role in shaping reality heavily influenced Romanticism. Remember the work name, Critique of Pure Reason, which was published in 1781. Okay, next. Wordsworth's poetic theory in the preface, of course, to the lyrical ballads, was a direct reaction against metaphysical poets, Gaudi and inane phraseology of 18th century, imagination over reason, use of common life. This is easy. This is easy because if you know Wordsworth, then you can answer it. It is option B, reaction against poetic diction in neoclassical period, right? So Wordsworth sought to dismantle the artificial poetic diction of the neoclassical period, arguing that poetry should use the real language of men rather than the ornate or stylized language, right? So, next one, which characteristic is defined as the ability to accommodate conflicting perspectives, investing the world within with mystery, denying absolute clarity? So, which characteristic of romanticism? Is it sublime, spontaneity, irony, subjectivity? Tell me. It is irony, romantic irony. So, it is actually a concept championed by the German romantics, especially Sessel. It involves the self-conscious awareness of the artist that their creation is inherently limited and conditional, allowing them to simultaneously hold and subvert perspectives, denying absolute clarity. Okay? I hope you know that, right? And if you ask about other options like sublime, it is the experience of awe and terror when confronted with vastness or power, especially in nature, often transcending rational understanding. Spontaneity, the romantic preference for art that appears to float naturally from an immediate emotion. Subjectivity, the focus on the inner emotional life of the individual rather than objective reality. So these are the concept. I hope you understand this. Now moving into Victorian criticism. If you have any doubt in romantic criticism or anything to ask, please comment in the chat box, comment box. And so you can reach me through my WhatsApp. You can get all the information in the description box. Remember, add one more thing, if you want a detailed romantic era or literary criticism quiz, then you can join my paid batch as well, which is going on. So first question from Victorian era, Victorian literary criticism is from Matthew Arnold, the critic's critic, right? Matthew Arnold is known as the critic's critic. So Arnold critiqued the industrialized middle class driven by utilitarianism and machinery, categorizing them as the barbarians, Philistines, populace, aesthetes. So actually, Arnold categorizes four types of people. So that's why he divides English society into not four. Sorry, he divides English society into three classes. Right, three classes. So which one is critic as the industrialized middle class? It is easy. It is the Philistines. In culture and anarchy, Arnold divided society into three categories, right? Barbarians means aristocracy, Philistines middle class, and populace working class. The Philistines were criticized for being anti-intellectual and obsessed with material wealth. Now tell me in the comment box in which year Culture and Anarchy was published. The publication year I want to know. Okay. And if you want to know the option D, which is it? It is aesthetics. It is actually a later term. It is actually literary term for those who associated with arts for art's sake movement, which Arnold was a critical of, but not one of his three social classes. Okay, it is not a social class. This is a term, literary term. Okay, art for art's sake. Remember, this is also important to know. Number 10 question. Matthew Arnold's famous critical essay, The Study of Poetry, published in 1880, was originally published as the introduction to which anthology? It is also important to know. Culture and Anarchy, Essays in Criticism, T.H. Words, The English Poets, The Function of Criticism. Remember, it is an anthology. Yes, it is option C. The English Poets. This essay served the general introduction to Thomas Humphrey Ward's anthology, The English Poets. It is here that Arnold outlines his classic theory of poetry's high destiny and his critical methods. Remember. So the study of poetry, in study of poetry, what we can find that it introduced the famous touchstone method and that argues for the importance of poetry. And it was originally published as the general introduction. Remember this important point. Okay. Other works in the in options, they are all famous work by Matthew Arnold himself. Arnold's method to achieve a real esteem of a poet by using short, excellent passages to guard against fallacies is called the. It is also easy, right? If you know, it is easy. Otherwise, you have to read it. It's called the touchstone method, which I already told you. Arnold suggested keeping lines from the great masters like Homer, Dante, Shakespeare in mind and applying them as a touchstone to other poetry to detect the presence or absence of high poetic quality. If you want to know more about the touchstone method, I will make a short. I mean the YouTube reel. Okay, just let me know. Which of the following statements best reflect Arnold's view on the future of poetry? Tell me, which option is it? It is option B, poetry's immense future. Okay? Which of the following statement? It is option B, which, it reflects Arnold's view on the future of poetry will become an ever surer stay. So poetry will become an ever surer stay. It is the answer. So Arnold famously wrote, "The future of poetry is immense because in poetry, where it is worthy of its high destinies, our race, as time goes on, will find an ever surer and surer stay, believing it would replace religion." Remember, he believed that poetry can also replace religion. Okay, next one. Which of the following extracts did Arnold use as a touchstone from Shakespeare? My favorite it is. Henry the Fourth, and yet Chaucer is not one of the greatest classic. We return to our places, these kingdoms. This is a very ecstasy of love. Which one it is? Mm-hmm. It is which one? Henry the Fourth. Option A. So Arnold quotes Henry Fourth dying words to his son, or the expostulation with sleep as example of supreme poetic quality. Please remember these points and connection. Matthew Arnold connection with Shakespeare. This is very important to know. Number 14 question. A major limitation often attributed to Arnold's criticism is, tell me, option A, B, C, or D. It is option C. Okay, lack of analytical study of a single poem. So a major limitation attributed to Arnold's criticism is lack of analytical study of a single poem. So critics like T.S. Eliot noted that while Arnold had good taste, he rarely engaged in the close reading, actually, which is a characteristic of new criticism, right? But Arnold never did that, and or detailed technical analysis of a complete poem, preferring instead to judge the snippets or general moral impression. So option C is the correct answer here. Okay. In Henry James' The Art of Fiction, published in 1884, his primary argument is that novel is for moral instruction. Novelists must have freedom to experiment, avoid immoral subject, maintain panoramic view. So the option B is the correct. So novelists must have freedom to experiment. James argued against the rigid constraint and rules placed on fiction by earlier critics like Walter Besant. He believed that the novel creates a direct impression of life and the artist must be free to pursue the impression however they see fit. Remember, Henry James and his art of fiction. Okay, remember this point. Now we come into the last question for this session, and it is from Walter Pater. Walter Pater aesthetics principle, art for art's sake, is most clearly articulated in which of his work? Aha, it is also easy. If you know, then you can just odd one out. Like Cultural Anarchy, it is not a work of Walter Pater, right? So option A, B, or C. It is option C, the Renaissance. Published in 1873, the conclusion to studies in the history of the Renaissance is the manifesto of English aestheticism, famously urging readers to burn with a hot gem-like flame and value the intensity of experience for its own sake. Okay? Studies in the history of the Renaissance. Remember that point. Okay, then an appreciation. This is a collection of essays by Pater, published in 1889, and Maria's the Epicurean. It is a philosophical novel. Okay, I hope you got all my points. Please read extra while you are practicing this question or other questions. Okay, till and next I will cover the next topic. You know already, it is already criticism going on, right? So we will cover modern criticism. I mean the new criticism, Russian formalism, like this. Okay, so till then, please keep practicing, revising these foundational concepts, and all the best for your exam. Thank you.